What's up, Dragon Brood? We have our favorite neighbor from the other coast in today with Dev. So if you don't know him, you should check him out over at MTG. And today we're going to be talking about foundations, particularly reprints that we think are a little bit underrated. Some cards that might see a little more play than you think, or maybe some that were bad last time that are probably going to be a little better this time.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of ways to go with this, and we don't know what each other's list is, so this should be a lot of fun. I don't know, man. I think this is going to be a fun list.
Yeah, we'll see. I think that of all the lists we're doing for this season, this is my spiciest one. Also, happy to be your favorite neighbor. Suck at everybody else. But let's, if you're just about ready, I could be just about ready, man, because I want to dive in. I'm really excited about this particular list.
Okay, well, quick shout out. If you're going to pick up any of these cards, check out Tales of Adventure. It's TOA Magic. Go over there. They support the channel, and you can save 5% by using code DRAGN, DRAGN. So yeah, save some money, because to be honest, there are a lot of cards that are worth buying in Foundations.
Yes.
With that being said, Dev, let's see what you got, because you're going to get to do our number one here.
Oh, I get to go first. Okay, so that never happens on the arena. My number 5 is this is one of the weirder ones on my whole list, but I swear to you, there's something there.
Okay.
It's Confiscate. This is, just 6 mana, you control enchanted permanent. And you telling me I control enchanted anything in the world? I think that's actually pretty powerful to have in standard. We have some kind of weak control magic effects, and they don't see a whole lot of play. And this is more expensive than most of them, right? But it's completely and totally unconditional. And I think that it could actually wreck a lot of decks on the top end, especially considering we have all these 6-7 mana creatures people are cheating into play, enchantments in this set people are going to be cheating into play, planeswalkers. So I don't think this is necessarily main deckable, but I would not be surprised to see Confiscate show up in the sideboard of multiple decks.
If this, I could see a weird world here where this is a sideboard card if you're playing a deck that's popular, say in blue something, right? And it's even 10% of the field, 15% of the field. They're going to have cards you already want in your deck. Mm-hmm. So siding that in to steal, let's say you're playing something that's playing against Caretaker's Talent, right? But you're already playing Caretaker's Talent. Hey, cool, I'll steal yours. Now I have an extra copy or whatever. Right? I'm kind of into it. I think there's some things you can do. Steal somebody's big reanimated creature.
Yeah,
that's the thing
somebody
we're doing, right?
Spent the whole game trying to get to Atraxa. It's yoink, I'll take that Atraxa. People are so scared that Omniscience is in this set, and it's cool. Thanks for playing that Omniscience. I guess I'll take that. You know what I mean? There are some pretty ridiculous 6 and 7 mana options to just snatch with this, that I think actually kind of in a small way helps to balance all the wild stuff they printed in the set. So
yeah, I think this is one. Yeah, I don't think it's great.
Yeah,
but I do think it is at least underrated to the point that when it happens across the table from me, I'm not going to be happy about it.
That, no matter what they steal, dude. I think there's lines where you steal their fountain port and it just changes the whole game.
Ooh,
yeah. I really do. So you steal their Unholy Annex,
yeah,
I don't know, man. Anything you can think of to steal, even if it is you said, a Caretaker's Talent, a 3 mana enchantment. You steal their Urbrass Forge. It's still got the counters on it, doesn't it? Let's go.
If they've unlocked their rooms already for you.
Yep. Yeah, they didn't leave the table or anything. It came to your side of the table already unlocked. I'm fairly certain. So that could be disgusting. Thanks for spending all that mana, dummy. I actually think Confiscate is real. Not main deckable, but again, depending on the matchup, man, I'm kind of into it.
I can feel that.
Yeah, dude. I had to start with a weird one, and don't worry, I'll continue on with weird ones. But I am interested in what your number 5 is.
My number 5 is Dragon Master Outcast.
Oh yeah, dude.
This is a 1 mana 1/1. At the beginning of upkeep, if you have 6 or more lands, you make a 5/5 dragon. What I like about this is, one, it's a human, so it can randomly fit in those decks or whatever.
Yeah.
It's a quality early drop if you are doing something that's dragon heavy or token heavy. Because sometimes those decks are looking for an early play and there's not a lot. You get caught playing a thing that all right, if this dies, I get a treasure, or maybe I get to scry or whatever. But this is great early and late, right? Like if you just need a body, fine. But late in the game, this is a must kill 1 for 1, or it's just going to start making 5/5s.
Yep.
Like it's that card that always got overlooked, but every time it hit the battlefield, you went like, ah, crap. All right.
Yep.
All right, I didn't deal with it. Now I have a 5/5 and a 1/1 I got to deal with. And now you're priced into still having to kill the 1/1, because if you don't, it's just going to be another 5/5 next turn.
Yep, you got to do something about it. I really, really like this card. I love 1-drops that have some relevance like late into the game. Right now in standard, not only do we have so many ways of ramping lands, so we got to point that out, but there's also like in big red, which is where this card has always kind of gone traditionally. We have Koth, which can find a mountain for you every turn to make sure that you hit that land threshold and start getting you dragons. So this card has seen play competitively before in like mid-range decks here and there. And right now we have like, Cut Down, obviously. We have Elspeth Smite, but who says you ever have to attack with this guy? We have like some small ball things that can take it out, but it's kind of like you said, like dovetailing off of what you said, they've committed a removal spell to your 1-mana 1/1 at that point. And that's kind of a dub, man, like a win-win for you at that point, because if they commit, something to your Dragon Master Outcast, that's something that they won't have for a later creature or a Deep Cavern Bat or whatever you're doing. So I'm really glad that you pointed this card out. Not everyone kind of knows the legacy of this card and how good it can be when left unchecked.
Yeah, and the last time it was standard legal, I think, was Battle for Zendikar.
Yeah, it wasn't too long ago.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure it saw too much play outside of boards in that standard, but we're in a standard now where we have like Aftermath Analyst tricks and all kinds of ways of getting lands onto the table early. There's also Overlord of the Hauntwoods, which puts a land onto the table for you. So, and it's a very good card. So,
and again, if you're just doing things that care about dragons, like this fits in that fine. And Foundations gave us a lot of ways to play dragons.
Yep. If you want to try Lathless out or whatever in standard, whatever her name is.
We got the thing that makes dragons cheaper. We have a tons of stuff. So
if you're looking for a 1-drop for your dragons deck, this is the one. So yeah, man, really good pick on this. All right.
So what do you got in the number 4 slot?
Can we keep talking about Dragon Master Outcast?
We can if you want to. Go for
it. I'm serious. It's really good. I love it. My next pick is also a 1-drop, but it doesn't have quite the pedigree as Dragon Master Outcast. It is Adventuring Gear. I believe this was printed in Zendikar.
Oh, yeah.
This is a single mana for an equipment that equips for a single mana as well, and it has landfall. So whenever a land you control enters, the equipped creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Can I say Aftermath Analyst again in this video?
Sure.
It's a Lumra, right? So all the landfall decks probably won't play this. I'll just throw that out there. They mostly want to kill their opponent all at one time. And this could do that with like a trample creature, like if you get 10 triggers in the same turn and you put this on a trample guy, you could win the game that way. But I'm not sure that's what's going to happen with this card. I'm ultimately not sure this card makes the grade, but you got to give it that it is a single mana to both play and equip, and that's about as cheap as it gets.
I will say, though, Foundations has quite a few cards that have landfall on them.
Yeah. Yes, it does.
It's possible, honestly. Like, it sounds crazy, like, oh, who's going to do this? But, like, again, like you're saying, to equip for 1, and you already have some things that care about lands entering right now, like, this could be paired with a few things to get some real damage in, potentially.
Like, relatively early. Usually the problem with equipments, and I just talked about a different equipment I think people are much more excited about in a different video we just recorded. And, I often say that equipment, you have to remember that it costs mana to get out. Sometimes a full turn to get this equipment out, and people, even a single mana is kind of a lot of mana in the early turns of a game when you're trying to use it as best you can, your mana. So I understand that, but this could add a lot of early game damage if you do it right. And it could even add like a form of reach to your deck where, past the sweeper. So as long as you have one creature, it kind of doesn't matter if you draw land, you're still doing something. I like that about it. So,
I mean, there are the decks that play Vine Lasher, the 3/3 that when you commit a crime, you can go get a land.
Yeah, that guy. Yeah.
So this could fit into something like that. Honestly, that's not a
Yeah.
huge stretch to make happen.
It's like a Fabled Passage or another fetch land like that, and you've got +4/+4. And like, that's not bad. It's really not.
And to be fair, this was played in some landfall decks in the
Back in the
original
day.
Zendikar, so
Yes, it was.
could be seeing some action again here in the future.
Agreed. Agreed. Just don't sleep on it.
Yeah.
But what be your number 4, I suppose we're on?
Okay. This one, you're gonna have to stick with me because there are gonna be people who say there's no way this card's underrated, but
Hmm.
I have an argument here.
It's even better than you think it is.
Exactly. That's what the case
There
is
it is.
here on Muldrotha the Gravetide.
Ooh, okay. Okay.
So 6 mana, 3 colorless, black, green, blue for a 6/6, and during each of your turns, you can play a land or cast a permanent of each type out of your graveyard. So this card been a commander staple for a minute, right?
Yeah.
Already popular. If you played against it, you know this card's strong. 6 mana isn't impossible to get if you just want to cast it. But we do know there is a lot of Reanimator stuff right now. One of the popular Reanimator decks is actually Sultai Colors right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Imagine if you could get this out of your graveyard for 3 mana and then still play other stuff in your yard. Or reuse some of those enchantments that are filling your graveyard. Right? Like there's some stuff you could really do with this that could be a good centerpiece for that deck.
Yeah, I actually am really surprised now that I hadn't heard that take on Muldrotha yet, that it goes in Squirming Emergence.
Yep.
Because you're right that, you can just reanimate this pretty early. It's not too hard for Emergence to get 6 cards in its yard. And then that deck also does play kind of a pretty diverse set of card types, right? Like it plays
Mm-hmm.
Founding the Third Path, and it plays sorceries. It obviously plays Emergence. So, you play
Well, that's the
Emergence to
thing,
get the
right?
Muldrotha, and then you can play permanents again out of your yard, like Fable Passage and creatures, and it's pretty good.
Emergence already wants you to have permanents.
Yeah.
That's the thing,
That's
right?
the whole
And
thing with
Muldrotha
Emergence.
can play permanents.
Right.
So it's perfect for that build. And it's funny because I hadn't seen anybody mention that because they play all these other targets and, there's other stuff that's good, obviously. But being able to play Muldrotha in addition to that stuff, and it's an actual reasonable thing you can just cast as the game drags
Yeah,
on.
eventually, right. But it wouldn't be unheard of either in Emergence to get Muldrotha on like turn 3. And like, can you imagine? Like they have to have the removal spell,
Oh, yeah,
or
yeah.
like if you untap with Muldrotha and play, it's just game. So that is a really good take. Like my only pushback is that Emergence wants to, like, on turn 4, reanimate something that more or less forces a scoop. And I
Oh,
don't
sure.
think Muldrotha forces a scoop,
No, no,
but
no,
I
no.
do think it adds dimension to that deck in a way
That's
it didn't
exactly
have.
it. Because
Yeah.
one of the things I've complained about on my channels, I'll see those decks and they seem to, in most cases, only win when I stumble or just am playing, just testing an awful deck, right?
Yeah.
But this feels like, okay, now you have one more piece that if things don't go your way or you don't get the right setup for your emergence or whatever to get the big thing, you at least have a mid-level thing that you can play that's still really powerful.
Yep. I get emails sometimes. Not, I'm going to try to keep this tangent free, but I get emails sometimes where people say, rather than showing me a deck of theirs, they want me to like look at and to talk about. They'll show me a deck from like a Pro Tour or an MTGO challenge, and they're like, explain this. I don't get this deck. And very often, it's not like it's a weird combo deck with a bunch of synergistic pieces no one's ever heard of. Oftentimes, it's usually like a mid-range deck that they're showing me. They're showing me
Oh,
a deck
yeah.
that does a lot of different things, right? Like it's got a main plan, but apart from that plan, it's got this one of that does this. It's got this two of that does that. And that's because not only the meta, but to make it a full-fledged Magic deck that can respond to every situation, it's got these like weird choices in it, And I think that Muldrotha is not necessarily an example of a weird choice. It's just an example of a deck being able to now do that, like actually have a fallback plan rather than just this big pile of synergy. If the thing happens, I win. If it doesn't happen, I'm screwed. Muldrotha does give that deck a chance to actually be like a big boy grown up Magic deck and do things past turn 4 if the plan falls apart.
Yeah,
I really like
that's
that
the other
deck.
legit part though to Muldrotha. Is like even outside of the Squirming Emergence stuff, like if you drop this after they've dealt with 4 or 5 of your creatures, and then next turn you just get to start playing stuff out of the
Yep.
graveyard. Like that's
Done.
super annoying for the opponent.
Yep. It's just like a super juiced up like Virtua Persistence, right? Like I
Yeah.
get to once a turn, really. Well, for each permanent type, right? I get to get stuff out of my yard, but the card is a kind of expensive to get in play in the first place.
Yeah, if you've never played
You
against
know?
this card, it's
Oh
rough
yeah.
when it sticks.
It looks like it's too expensive, but last time I was in standard, it saw a fair amount of play in just like a mid-range deck,
Mm-hmm.
and I imagine if it sees play again, it could easily just be that kind of deck. Like this could turn the Squirming Emergence pile into a pile that only plays 3 Squirming Emergence. And it's like a mid-range deck
Possible,
outside
yeah.
of that. So just, I agree on Muldrotha. I think it's like you said, even better than some people think it is. Like if you've experienced it before, you know how good it is. But there are going to be some people who are like, it's 6 mana, it's too expensive. Like, no, it's better. It's better than you think, dude. I
Bro,
promise.
I'm just letting you know, I'm gearing up for casting 5, 6, 7 mana things in standard, and there's a lot of ways to do it right now.
There's so many. There's so many. You can cheat so hard in standard, dude. But what
All
are we
right. You are up next.
Number 3, I believe, on
Yep.
my end, is Hedron Archive or Hedron Archive. This is a 4 mana for an artifact. You can tap it for 2 colorless mana, or you can pay 2, tap it, and sack it to draw 2 cards. This is so much better than it looks, which we have already learned. And we have the gray in our beards to prove it. This card was legal in standard not actually that long ago, but I still think there's going to be a number of people who either forgot about it or never played against it, or they just started playing. And it just looks like, a too expensive Soul Ring or something. But what it is a double like Mind Stone, right? Mind Stone, pay 2 mana, tap it for a mana, pay mana, tap it, draw a card, right? Tap, sack it, draw a card.
Yeah.
This is just Mind Stone twice. And think about the fact that 4 mana for 2 ramp is kind of the going rate in standard anyway.
Sure.
Invasion of Zendikar and stuff like that. 4 mana, 2 ramp, sure. Right now, in these artifact-centric decks, you'll sometimes catch people playing Might Stone and Weak Stone. It's a pretty good card. That's 5 mana to ramp 2, and that can only be spent on artifacts. This is 4 mana to ramp 2, and you can spend it on whatever you want. And any deck can play it. You don't have to dip into green to play Invasion or whatever. So I think that is fan-freaking-tastic, and also don't discount the card draw mode on it, which can be really powerful too.
Yeah, if you're playing a slower deck, this could fit in there, especially if you just need to activate some things during your opponent's end step. Like you said, you want a way to draw some cards. I don't have a problem with this, honestly, being on your list. It's one of those ones that I think isn't flashy, but
Yeah,
it definitely, when you look at it, I think this is the example of, you go, it's an uncommon, whatever. But if this even just shows up in a handful of decks, I mean, that's probably more than what people are expecting, you
yep.
know?
So I don't think people really get, like, they look at it, no, that's a little bit too slow. But when it's one of those cards that like your opponent plays it against you and you're like, they're going to untap and have 7 mana next turn. You know what I mean? Oh God. Right. And then later on in the game, again, being able to cash it in a ramp deck. Ramp decks don't have a lot of ways to draw cards. So like a piece that both ramps and reliably draws cards is always like really good.
There's probably some weird spots too where this goes into some type of like omniscience deck as like a backup way to try to be able to cast it. But if you have omniscience, you just play it and you get to draw 2 cards
Draw
cheaply.
2.
Like something like that. So like wouldn't surprise me.
Nope. This could go in Simulacrum Synthesizer to not only trigger the synthesizer, but later you can draw into more big artifacts and try to trigger synthesizer more. Or you could like double spell on the next turn and get more of the constructs. That's just one deck this goes into, but there's a lot. Hedron Archive is always. I feel like it took us a while to realize how good the card was last time it was in standard, and I don't want us to make that same mistake this time.
That's totally reasonable.
What do you have for numero trace, amigo?
All right. So this one I'm going to set up a little bit because I think we have a lot of elves, and I think elves can be a very good aggressive deck in the new standard. I think mono card, like mono green, just stack your bonuses, stack your mana, do your thing. I think mono green is actually right on the cusp. It's been playable for a while now.
Yep.
One of the issues you have though sometimes is you do get these creatures and you just can't force damage through, right? Especially in a world where people are trying to play like Caretaker's Talent, make rabbit tokens to block with or whatever. But if you happen to have an overrun,
I knew it was good. I knew it.
like, and everything has trample, and as a bonus, just getting +3/+3, you can end games fairly quickly.
Yep.
And I don't think people are aware. We haven't had like actual overrun in standard for a minute,
It's
right?
been a while.
We've had
Yeah.
like get +2/+2. We've had like get +3/+3, no trample. We've had get some bonus. Everybody has vigilance. Like, but we haven't actually had to straight up +3/+3 with trample for your whole team, tokens and all. I think I'm going to die to this card more than I'm happy about.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Overrun is always underestimated, ironically, considering the name. I've died to this card a bunch, like a whole lot. We've had it in standard a few times in its life cycle, but the times that I've died to this the most were in the original, like Tempest when it was first printed, you know, but it was the win condition in Mono Green Stompy for a while back then.
Yeah.
Because basically if you have like 3 guys on the table and you cast Overrun, rule is you basically win the game. This is always, this is a great pick, by the way. This is always better than it looks. Right now, you know, we're looking at Lathril, Blade of the Elves, and a couple of other sort of elf ball win conditions for the Elves deck. And like, screw that, run them over. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just run them over, steamroll them. And Overrun is like much better than it looks at doing that. People look at it, they think it's too expensive, but like, how much would you pay for a card that says you win the game? 5 mana, whatever it is, it's a steal. It's not bad.
Oh, it breaks stalemates, you know, even, and it honestly, there's a lot of times, you know, now where you'll set up a thing. Okay, I'm going to attack with these 1 or 2 creatures. I'm going to leave a couple things back. So in case they attack, I can chump block, whatever. And then they overrun. You're like, well, okay, I'm dead anyway.
Crap. Yeah.
Yeah. that's literally how it happens.
It's like just trample on one guy is really good right now. I don't know if you've experienced that, but like, yeah, just being able to give one dude trample is like game breaking. So like give your whole team tramps is crazy. Like it's not too high of a cost. It's not that much to ask. No, it really isn't.
It's green heavy, but again, if you're already in, you know, some type of Gruul aggro, mono green big guys, you're playing some type of elf deck, like that's good enough.
It's like you said, you know, even Gruul or like Selesnya or something can play this, you know? So I'm envisioning it some sort of like green-white tokens deck plays like hop to it. I don't know, like maybe the reason you'd play that is not only to go wide for Overrun, but also so you could play like the green enduring guy that lets all your dudes tap for mana, and then
that's cute.
Tap some guys, play Overrun, the rest of your dudes attack. I don't know, I'm spitballing, but like Overrun's always good. It is always good.
Oh yeah.
Where are we?
That brings us up to number 2.
Number 2 already. Wow. My number 2 is actually a card that has not been out of standard for that long. It really hasn't. But I still think people are taking it lightly and forgetting that it's in this set. It is Immersturm Predator. This is 4 mana, 2 a black and a red for a 3/3 vampire Drago with flying. Whenever this creature becomes tapped, exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard and put a +1/+1 counter on this guy. Sacrifice another creature to have Immersturm Predator gain indestructible until end of turn. You also have to tap it down. So the modern day regenerate on this card. This is so stupid for Rakdos Sacrifice decks, man. Like, I'm pretty sure this is the other win condition. Like, you know, they had Rottenmouth Viper up until now. I think Rottenmouth was like the best win con for them, but now, it's a sacrifice outlet that is free and repeatable every turn. That also survives sweepers and removal spells and stuff like that. It grows throughout the game and messes with graveyards, which is super important. Just like, I think this card's going to be better than it was last time, and it was pretty good last time.
Yeah, I'm a fan. You know, I'm with you too. I think those decks have kind of needed one more thing because you know they've had Viper, they've had Braids. You know,
Braids.
But Braids is like if they're already close to dead, right?
Yeah.
But this being a flyer, you know, being something that survives a bunch of removal, like it can actually work with a couple of different game state situations where you need to sack something to get a bonus or whatever. Right. It's just a quality all around card. So like, yeah, I would expect this one to see a fair amount of play. Like this card's just good.
I think it's just got the right niche that it didn't really have last time. And again, it would pop up from time to time last time it was in standard, but it was never like amazing, you know? So
yeah, again, I think that's a good call out. I think people need to be aware of that too. And we're talking about some of these reprints from Foundations. Like cards, it's hard to look at cards and say they are good or bad based on how they used to be.
Yeah.
Because the
Yep.
environments are way different. The number of sets available are different. The way we play Magic is different, right? So the expectations are going to be different on every card. And we didn't have what I would call like super quality Rakdos sacrifice decks when this was around last time.
Back then, no, we didn't.
Especially with the abilities we have now. We have creatures you can sacrifice to get an extra card, ones that scry and make you treasure.
Yep.
You know,
we
like
have we have Clockwork Percussionist and like Piggy Bank and stuff.
yeah, all
now.
kinds of stuff.
Greedy Freebooter
way
in these
better.
colors. Yep.
Yeah, I'm into it. So yeah, this is a great pick.
Thank you. But with that said, what is your number 2?
Mine, this was a card. Honestly, when I saw it on the list, I didn't realize how much I missed this card at times. To the point that I forgot about it, and then I was mad at myself. I forgot it existed.
Huh.
Primal Might.
Oh, yeah, this card's great.
X and a green. Target creature gets +X/+X until end of turn, and then it fights up to one creature you don't control. This, now again, if it was instant speed, it'd be completely absurd. But even being sorcery speed, this is fine. Because for 1 green, you just have a fight spell, right? Even if you never give it a bonus, it's like, great, my thing fights your thing, whatever. But the fact that you can give a thing a bonus, again, if we're talking about something with trample or menace or whatever the case is, right? And you get to kill something on the way with extra damage, like, this thing's awesome. Like, such a good fight. Like, if you were thinking about playing another fight spell and you weren't sure what you wanted, this is a more than reasonable card to play in that slot.
Yep. Almost in any, green or gruel or whatever deck. This, I believe, ended up first. I don't know if it got printed into the main set, but I know for a fact it's in the starter collection kit, so it's legal and standard. Mm-hmm. And Jadine Klomperens, or I said Carmen Klomperens, rather, was talking on stream about how she got to kind of hand pick the cards for that set. And one of the reasons she picked Primal Might is because like this was in a deck that she took to the Pro Tour. This card has a real pedigree, like this card saw a lot of play last time it was in standard. And the reason for that is because it is a massive blowout every time it is cast. It looks like it's very tempting to see a card like this and be like, oh, sorcery speed's bad. It's so bad, but this card is actually kind of a test, especially at this point, since we've already had experience with the card. It's kind of a test to see whether or not you just think all sorceries are bad. You know what I mean? Because this is one of the better sorceries for green printed in the last, 5 or 6 years.
In a while.
Yeah. It doesn't look like much, but just like we were talking with other cards on this list, it's one of those where like you don't think it looks great and then it gets played against you. It plays really, really well.
Oh yeah.
It really does. And you don't have to like do tricks with death touch creatures or anything. Just like, I pump like 3 mana into it. My guy fights your guy, kills him. I get through for 1 million combat damage. And that is a ridiculous interaction. Simplicity, but it works every time.
Oh yeah.
It's a good card.
I think it's until you play with it, you don't understand when you're like, okay, well, they've tapped out, played their best creature last turn. I don't know, let's say whatever it is. And you're just like, you know what? I'm going to go and spend 4 mana. I get to fight your best thing. And now I'm attacking with like a 6/6 or a 7/7.
Right.
And like, you have to decide, like, am I just going to take this all to the dome or am I going to give up another creature to block it?
Yep.
Like that's real.
Also, keep in mind, the decks that might play this card, like Golgari, for instance, they have Glissa, they have Sheldred. Those are death touch guys. They have Akhlazotz, a lifelink guy. So, like, the things that we have in standard right now are even more conducive to playing a card like this, I think.
For sure. That's a good call out. Yeah.
Great pick. Primal Might is amazing. And if people have forgotten that, they need to remember. They will. They will. But we're at my number 1. This is one of my favorite cards in the entire set. This is Dread Summons. This is 2 black and X for sorcery. Each player mills X cards. For each creature card put into a graveyard this way, you create a tapped 2/2 black zombie creature token. Is it just me, or is this card like completely cracked in half? Like, first of all, it mills for X. So the outrageous robbery argument, I guess, applies to this too. But imagine this in, say, the demon. The demon that casts Doomsday when he hits the table. You know, everyone goes down to
Mm-hmm.
6 cards. Yeah, this will mill and also kind of put some guys on your side of the table if it doesn't kill them outright immediately. You don't have the mana for that. Put some guys on your side of the table to kind of hold down the fort until your opponent mills out. There's that, but you know, there's also just the fact that if you have a fair number of creatures in your deck, this is probably for a cheap cost going to put like 6 or 8 PT on your side of the table. And I think that's a good deal. So, how do you feel about Dread Summons?
I think it's one of those cards that kind of like we were just talking about. Like the first time it was around, didn't see a lot of play, but now we have different decks and different styles of decks where this could work, right? There's some Demir Mill decks still running around, right?
Yeah.
This could be fine. Like you just play it for, I don't know, let's say 6, right? That's not unreal. And maybe you get a couple of tokens to block with and you milled your opponent for 4 cards, right? Like you're saying, you play the demon. Okay, well, you only have 6 cards left anyway, right? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
let's flip the rest
Exactly.
and see what happens. Like, are you able to get another card in your library? Right? There's some different ways this card can be used that just didn't exist the last time it was standard legal.
No.
Because I think
And
that was, oh my god, more than 10 years ago,
it
probably.
was this is an old card.
Maybe at 8 or 9 years ago, but
Yeah.
it's one of those things that I think, you know, as the environment changes, some cards get better or worse, and there's a real chance this could see some play. Now, I don't know if it's better, like you were saying, than, you know, the robbery.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the only thing holding it back, you know, because robbery sort of does the same thing at instant speed if you're just trying to mill somebody out. But if you want the
But
bodies and you happen to be playing zombies or something, then
yeah,
this has more upside.
I think the bodies are probably better. Like robbery's fun because you get to play their own cards against them and all that. But being able to spend that much mana and actually play something to the board, I think
Oh,
is
sure.
really valuable. And also it mills each player. So like, yeah, you can kind of mill them out too. And that, you know, there's that. But first I want to say back to, on the Doomsday Demon, if you do cast this while, you know, right after you cast the demon, yeah, it mills each player. But if you say go, they have to draw their card first.
Yep.
So they die. But also milling each player, that means it could work in like Oculus decks and Reanimator decks. And if you want to flash a thing back or whatever, you know, so milling you too could be this massive upside as well. So I don't know, man. I don't have the highest hopes in the world, but I do think in terms of like cards that are being completely ignored, this is really high on my list. I think it's okay.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's just one again, I think it's a role player, right? Wherever it
Yeah.
shows up. But again, if you're doing a zombie deck already, well, if you mill for say 4 cards, well, you're probably flipping 2 from yours, maybe 1 or 2 from theirs.
Two
You
from
got 4
theirs.
zombies.
Yep.
Like that's real,
Yep.
you know?
That's kind of what I was saying earlier. You spend like 5 or 6 men on this, you might get like 6, 8 PT and like pretty good deal.
Yeah.
So, you know, but what is your number 1?
This is a card that does literally have a pedigree over the years. It's been played in a ton of decks previously. Hasn't been standard legal for gosh, I don't know, a while now. And I think we got set up for disappointment because people were hoping it was going to be a different Pro Tour winner card. But we've got Solemn Simulacrum.
Oh yeah, yeah. Good pick for number 1. Yeah.
You know, 4 mana, 2/2 comes into play. You search for a basic land, put it on the battlefield. But when it dies, you get to draw a card. I think there's still room for this card. Now, admittedly, 4 mana, 2/2, whatever. But it does ramp you if that's the thing you need to do. It is an artifact, and we have several decks that care about artifacts right now. Hell, this could, it's in the name, but it can go into the Simulacrum Synthesizer deck,
right?
It makes you a body, get you another 2/2, get you a land, so the other crazy artifacts you're playing can just be hard cast if necessary. Like, that's a real thing. You chump block with it, you get a bonus
Draw a card. Yeah.
if you have a way to just keep getting things back into play. We've seen some cards like that, right? That let you play something out of the graveyard. You can keep ramping and getting more cards. Like, that's a thing. So yeah, and again, I don't think this is going to show up in a ton of decks, but I think it's been so easily dismissed because people just go, it costs 4 mana to 2/2, whatever. Not realizing it's 4 mana to get a 2/2 and a land and a card sometimes in one whole turn cycle.
Right. Exactly.
That's a lot for 4 mana still. Now, you do have to have a deck that takes advantage of it and facilitates it doing all those things, but it is actually possible.
Yeah, we don't usually see this kind of ETB and dies trigger like that are of this quality
Yeah.
on the same card. It's usually worth 4 mana. It seems like every time Simulacrum comes out, like from the very beginning of it coming out, when people were confused, like this is an invitational winners card, you know, and then like it became really, really played in that standard. And then it got reprinted into standard like 10 years later. And again, the cycle continued like, this card's pretty bad, right? And it sees play in standard last time it was in standard. So I think that probably happens again, but we've got some pretty quality 4s, right? We got Sheldred in the format. We've got Biza in the format. There's Archfiend to the Dross, and there's a lot of people are using their 4-drop slot right now for something or another. But, you know, you brought up Synthesizer. I think it's really good in that deck, like fantastic. And
yeah, it probably has to be something that cares about artifacts particularly.
Probably. But altogether, you know, Synthesizer tends to see some play in standard. Every time we get access to it. And I think people always kind of tend to underestimate what this card can do. So excellent, excellent pick for number 1. Let's just all, again, a couple of these on both of our lists are like, let's just make sure we don't forget how good this card actually is. You know what I mean? And I think people are. And I think that SomSim, old Sad Robo, is like one of the better examples of that. Haven't heard much discussion about it this preseason, and it is good. It's a very solid card.
Well, those are our lists, y'all. Those are underrated reprints. We still have other content, so y'all are gonna have to check out some other videos because we're also gonna do the overrated, underrated new cards as well. So you want to keep your eyes out for those. But in the meantime, Dev, where can they find you?
Well, they can find me over at Strictly Better MTG on YouTube.com. But if that's a little too long for you, just type in 5 letters, SBMTG, and I will pop up. My ugly face and lots of new content from preview stuff to we're about to do the top 25 or maybe 50 lists for foundations. There's a lot coming up. You'll also see his much more handsome face because we're putting out double the videos this preview season than we normally do together. So lots of content over there. And that's about all I do is make YouTube videos. So come check me out.
That's a good problem to have. Well, all that being said, y'all know what to do. Remember, like, subscribe. Make sure you don't miss those other videos coming up, and they will be on both of our channels, so go check those out. But as always, wherever you're watching or listening, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. Be kind, all that good stuff. And remember to be awesome to each other.